Martha Jane Callahan dropped to her knees in the frozen mud, clutching her three daughters against her chest as the stagecoach disappeared into the gray Wyoming sky. 17 cents. That was all she had left. 17 cents, 3 hungry children, and a dead man's empty promises buried somewhere beneath the snow. If you want to know how one silent cowboy changed everything for this desperate mother, subscribe now and stay until the very end. Drop a comment telling me which city you're watching from. I love seeing how far this story travels. The stagecoach driver didn't look back. Martha watched the wheels cut through the slush, spraying brown water across her hem. And she didn't move. Couldn't move. Her arms tightened around Molly, who whimpered against her shoulder, while Hannah stood rigid beside her, one hand gripping Grace's thin wrist. "Mama." Hannah's voice was flat, controlled. The voice of a 12-year-old who had learned that crying solved nothing. "What do we do now?" Martha opened her mouth, closed it. The words wouldn't come. 300 miles. They had traveled 300 miles in that rattling coach, eating stale bread and sleeping in shifts because there wasn't room for all of them to lie down. 300 miles toward a man named George Perkins, who had promised her a home, a future, a father for her girls. George Perkins was dead. Buried 2 weeks ago, the driver had said. Cave-in at the mine. Quick death, if that's any comfort. It wasn't. "Mama?" Hannah again, sharper now. "People are staring." Martha forced herself to look up. Silver Creek's main street stretched before them, a muddy ribbon lined with weathered buildings, a general store, 2 saloons already loud with afternoon drinkers, a church steeple rising at the far end, its white paint peeling. And people. People everywhere, moving past them, around them, their eyes sliding away the moment Martha tried to meet them. "Excuse me." Martha stepped toward a woman in a wool coat. "Please, ma'am, could you tell me where I might find—" The woman walked faster. "Please." Martha tried again with an older man carrying a crate. "Sir, I need—" He didn't slow down. Molly began to cry. Not loud sobs, but quiet, hiccuping sounds that she pressed into Martha's neck. 5 years old, and already learning to muffle her pain. "Hush, baby." Martha stroked her daughter's hair with shaking fingers. "It's going to be all right." But it wasn't going to be all right. Martha knew that with a certainty that made her want to scream into the gray sky until her throat bled. "There's a lady watching us." Grace's voice was barely a whisper. She pointed toward a building with a hand-painted sign, Price's Boarding House. Martha turned. A woman stood on the porch, arms crossed over a flour-dusted apron. Gray hair pinned beneath a sensible cap. Sharp eyes that didn't look away when Martha met them. "Stay here," Martha told Hannah. "Watch your sisters." "Mama." "Stay here." Martha crossed the street. Her boots squelched in the mud. She could feel eyes on her back, could feel the town watching, judging, dismissing her before she'd spoken a word. She stopped at the bottom of the porch steps. "Ma'am?" Her voice cracked. She hated it. "I'm Martha Callahan. I've just arrived and I find myself in unexpected circumstances." Unexpected. The woman's tone was dry. "That what you're calling it?" Martha lifted her chin. "I was told a man named George Perkins would be meeting me. I've been informed he's no longer living." Cave-in, 3 weeks back. The woman uncrossed her arms. "You're the mail-order bride, then?" The words stung. Martha had spent hours composing her response to that advertisement, choosing each word carefully to sound respectable rather than desperate. She had convinced herself it wasn't shame, answering a stranger's call for a wife. It was survival. "I was corresponding with Mr. Perkins, yes. And now he's dead. And you're standing in my street with 3 children and nowhere to go." The woman's gaze moved to the girls huddled together on the walkway. "Those yours?" "Yes, ma'am. 3 daughters. Father?" "Dead. 4 years now." Something shifted in the woman's expression. Not quite softening, but not the cold dismissal Martha had encountered everywhere else. "I'm Agatha Price. I run this place." She paused, studying Martha's face. "You look about ready to fall over." "I'm fine." "You're lying, but I appreciate the spine." Mrs. Price turned toward her door. "Bring those girls inside. I've got stew on the stove and bread that just came out. We'll sort out the rest after you've eaten." Martha's throat closed. "I can pay. I have 17 cents. I can see it in your face." Mrs. Price held the door open. "We'll figure out payment later. Right now, those babies need food, and you need to sit down before you collapse." Martha gathered her daughters, hurrying them toward the boarding house with a relief so profound it made her dizzy. Inside, the main room was warm. A stone fireplace crackled against one wall, and a long wooden table dominated the center, already set with bowls and spoons. The smell of stew made Molly whimper with hunger. "Sit," Mrs. Price pointed to the bench. "All of you." Martha helped her daughters onto the seats. Grace pressed close to her side, trembling. Hannah sat stiff and watchful, her eyes tracking Mrs. Price's every movement. And Molly had stopped crying, her attention fixed on the pot hanging over the fire. Within minutes, steaming bowls appeared before them. Thick stew with potatoes and carrots, fresh bread with butter, milk for the girls. Molly grabbed her spoon and shoved food into her mouth so fast she nearly choked. "Slow down, baby," Martha's voice broke. "There's plenty. She won't take it away." "Let her eat." Mrs. Price settled into a chair across from them. "When's the last time these children had a proper meal?" Martha couldn't answer. Couldn't admit that yesterday's breakfast had been a shared biscuit, that she'd given her own portion to Grace, because Grace was the smallest and the palest, and Martha couldn't bear to watch her fade. "That's what I thought." Mrs. Price poured herself coffee. "So, what's your plan now?" "I don't have one." The admission tasted like failure. "I thought—" "It doesn't matter what I thought. Everything's different now." "You got family back east you can go to?" "No." "Money to travel?" "No." "Skills? Trade?" Martha straightened. "I can sew. I worked in a garment factory in Boston before I married. And I can read and write. I taught my daughters myself." "Taught them yourself?" Mrs. Price's eyebrows rose. "You educated?" "My mother was a school teacher. She made sure I learned." Mrs. Price leaned back, something calculating in her expression. "Now that's interesting." "Why?" "Because Silver Creek ain't had a proper teacher since Miss Brennan ran off with a cattle buyer last fall. School board's been looking, but nobody wants to come this far out." She paused. "They'd want to meet you proper. See proof you know your letters. But if you can teach reading and writing and arithmetic—" Hope flickered in Martha's chest. She crushed it down. Hope had betrayed her too many times. "Is there housing for a teacher?" "Cabin next to the schoolhouse, small but sturdy, comes with a position." Mrs. Price shrugged. $15 a month, plus the cabin. School board provides firewood. Ain't much by Eastern standards, but out here, it's respectable. $15 a month. A cabin of their own. A chance to build something instead of running from wreckage. "How do I apply?" "I'll send word to Reverend Cross in the morning. He heads the school board." Mrs. Price looked at the 3 girls, now scraping their bowls clean. A widow with children causes less scandal than a pretty young thing like Miss Brennan. Might work in your favor. Martha reached across the table and gripped Mrs. Price's hand. "I don't know why you're helping us." "Don't make it more than it is." Mrs. Price pulled her hand away, but not unkindly. I lost my own husband 20 years back. Know what it's like being alone, with nothing but pride and desperation? She stood, gathering empty bowls. You and the girls can have the back room tonight. We'll figure out the rest tomorrow. Thank you. Martha's eyes burned. Truly. Don't thank me yet. This town ain't always kind to strangers. Mrs. Price paused at the kitchen doorway. Especially women alone. That night, Martha lay awake in the narrow bed, her daughters pressed against her on all sides. Molly slept with her thumb in her mouth. Grace whimpered through troubled dreams, and Hannah lay rigid at the edge, her back to her mother, her body curled in on itself like she was bracing for a blow. 12 years old and already carrying the weight of the world. Martha had done that to her, not intentionally, but through every failure, every move, every time she couldn't keep food on the table or a roof over their heads. Hannah had learned to expect disappointment, had learned to protect her sisters because she didn't trust her mother to do it. That truth burned worse than all the rest. I'll do better, Martha whispered into the darkness. I swear to God, I'll do better. She didn't sleep until nearly dawn. Morning brought Reverend William Cross to Mrs. Price's boarding house. He was a tall man, thin and gray, with kind eyes behind wire-rimmed spectacles. He sat in Mrs. Price's parlor with a Bible in his lap and examined Martha like she was a puzzle he was trying to solve. You taught in Boston, you say? I worked in a garment factory, Reverend, but I taught my daughters to read and write and do figures. My mother was a school teacher. I learned from her. References? Martha pulled a folded paper from her bag. A letter from my mother's former employer, and certificates showing my daughters' progress in their studies. Reverend Cross read slowly, his lips moving. When he finished, he folded the papers and returned them. Mrs. Callahan, I'll be direct with you. This town has had trouble with teachers. They come out here expecting civilization and find mud in minors and men who drink too much on Saturday nights. He paused. The last 3 didn't last a year. I'm not looking for civilization, Reverend. I'm looking for a chance to feed my children. And you came here as a mail-order bride. The words hung in the air. Martha felt her cheeks burn, but she didn't look away. I came here because a man offered me a home, and I had no better options. He died before I arrived. That's not scandal, Reverend. That's misfortune. Reverend Cross was quiet for a long moment. Then he smiled, just slightly. You've got spine, Mrs. Callahan. That'll serve you well here. He stood, adjusting his coat. Trial period, 3 months. If the children are learning and the parents aren't complaining, the position is yours permanently. If not, he shrugged, there's always another stagecoach heading east. There won't need to be. We'll see. He moved toward the door. School term resumes Monday. That gives you 4 days to prepare. The cabin needs work. Previous tenant left it in a state. He paused. And Mrs. Callahan? Yes? This town talks. A woman alone with 3 daughters will attract attention. Some of it welcome. Most of it not. His eyes were serious. Keep your head down. Do your job. Don't give anyone reason to question your character. I understand. After he left, Mrs. Price appeared with fresh coffee. Could have gone worse. Cross is fair, even if he's cautious. She poured 2 cups. The cabin's about a mile out, near the schoolhouse. I'll have someone show you the way. I appreciate everything you've done, Mrs. Price. Agatha, and don't appreciate me yet. She handed Martha a cup. There's something you should know about this town. What's that? Folks here don't trust outsiders. They've been burned before. Miners who steal and run. Merchants who cheat. Women who... She waved a hand. Well, you understand. I'm not here to cause trouble. I know that, but they don't. Agatha sat down across from her. You'll have to prove yourself. Every day, every interaction. And even then, some of them won't accept you. Martha wrapped her hands around the warm cup. I've been not accepted before. I survived. I believe you did. Agatha's expression softened, just slightly. Now, let's talk about getting you settled. The cabin was worse than Martha expected. She stood in the doorway, her daughters behind her, staring at the debris of someone else's abandoned life. Dirty dishes in the basin, dust covering every surface, a mousetrap with something desiccated still caught in it. It's dirty, Molly announced. Yes, baby, it is. I don't like it. Neither do I, but it's ours now. Martha rolled up her sleeves. And we're going to make it shine. They worked through the afternoon. Martha scrubbed while Hannah swept. Grace organized the meager supplies that remained, and Molly helped by carrying things from one pile to another and asking endless questions. Why did the other lady leave? I don't know, baby. Did she die like Mr. Perkins? No, she moved away. Why? Because she wanted something different. Do we want something different? Martha paused, rag in hand. We want a home, Molly, that's all. This doesn't feel like home. Not yet, but it will. A knock at the door made them all freeze. Martha crossed the room, suddenly aware of her dirty dress and disheveled hair. She opened the door expecting Mrs. Price, or perhaps Reverend Cross. Instead, she found a man. Tall, broad-shouldered, dark hair beneath a worn hat, gray touching his temples. His face was weathered, lined by sun and wind, but his eyes were what stopped her. Deep brown and filled with a sadness that seemed too heavy for one person to carry. Ma'am? He touched the brim of his hat. Name's Jacob Wilder. I own a ranch a few miles out. Martha's hand tightened on the doorframe. Can I help you, Mr. Wilder? Other way around. He gestured toward a wagon parked in front of the cabin. Mrs. Price mentioned you'd need supplies. Firewood, mainly. Winter's coming early this year. I can't afford. Didn't ask for payment. Martha stiffened. I don't accept charity, Mr. Wilder. Ain't charity. His voice was low, quiet, the voice of a man who didn't waste words. Schoolhouse roof leaks. Has for 2 years. School board keeps saying they'll fix it, but nobody does. He met her eyes. I'll fix the roof. You teach the children. We're even. Martha studied him, looking for the catch, the angle, the hidden expectation. Men didn't help for nothing. She had learned that lesson the hard way. But his face revealed nothing except patience. Why? She asked. Why what? Why help strangers? You don't know us. You don't owe us anything. Jacob Wilder was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was rough around the edges. Because I know what it's like to have nothing, and I know what it's like when nobody helps. He turned toward his wagon. Firewood's in the back. I'll start on the roof tomorrow. He began unloading before Martha could protest. She watched him work, this silent stranger with the sad eyes, and something unfamiliar stirred in her chest. Not attraction. She had buried that part of herself years ago. But something else. Something she couldn't name. Mama! Hannah appeared at her elbow, her voice tight with suspicion. What does he want? I don't know, baby. Men always want something. Yes, Martha put her arm around her daughter. They usually do. They watched Jacob Wilder stack firewood against the cabin wall, his movements efficient and sure. He didn't look at them, didn't try to make conversation, just worked, steady and silent, until the wagon was empty. Then he climbed back onto the seat and tipped his hat. Ma'am? Miss? He was gone before Martha found her voice. He's strange, Molly announced from behind them. But he has nice eyes. Molly! Hannah's tone was sharp. Don't be foolish. I'm not being foolish. I'm being observant. Miss Hannah says I should always observe things. Despite everything, Martha smiled. You're both right. He is strange. And he does have nice eyes. Mama! Hannah looked horrified. Go wash up for supper, all of you. The girls disappeared inside, their voices rising in argument about who got to use the clean water first. Martha stood in the doorway a moment longer, watching the dust settle where Jacob Wilder's wagon had been. Strange indeed, but kind. And in a town that had shown her nothing but closed doors and averted eyes, kindness felt like a miracle. She went inside and closed the door firmly behind her. 4 days until school started. 4 days to prove she belonged here. 4 days to turn a stranger's cabin into a home. Martha had survived worse odds. She would survive this too. She had to. For her daughters. For herself. For the future she refused to stop believing in, no matter how many times it broke her heart. Jacob Wilder arrived at dawn. Martha heard the wagon wheels before she saw him, the steady creak pulling her from the lesson plans she had been drafting by candlelight. She moved to the window, then caught herself and stepped back. He's here again. Molly's face pressed against the glass. The quiet man with the sad eyes. His name is Mr. Wilder. Martha smoothed her dress. And don't stare. I'm not staring. I'm observing. Hannah looked up from the primer she was reading to Grace. Observing what? A stranger who keeps showing up uninvited? He was invited, Martha said. He's fixing the schoolhouse roof. Nobody asked him to. He offered. There's a difference. Hannah's jaw tightened, but she said nothing. She returned to the primer, her voice flat as she guided Grace through the alphabet. Martha stepped outside. Jacob was already unloading lumber from his wagon, his movements efficient in the gray morning light. A large brown hound had jumped down and was sniffing around the schoolhouse steps with arthritic interest. Mr. Wilder! He turned, touched his hat. Ma'am? You're early. Roof won't fix itself. Martha wrapped her arms around herself against the cold. I wanted to thank you for the firewood. The girls were warm last night for the first time since we left Boston. Good. That was all. Just good. No expectation of gratitude, no fishing for more thanks. Just acknowledgement and back to work. Would you like coffee? The words escaped before she could stop them. I made too much. Jacob paused, a board balanced on his shoulder. Don't want to impose. You're not imposing. You're working on my schoolhouse at dawn. The least I can offer is coffee. Something flickered across his face. Surprise, maybe, or something deeper. All right, then. They sat on the schoolhouse steps, tin cups warming their hands. Jacob's dog settled at his feet, groaning with the contentment of old age. Inside, Martha could hear her daughters arguing about something, their voices muffled but familiar. How old is he? Martha nodded toward the dog. Bo? Near 14, best I can figure. That's old for a dog. It is. Jacob rubbed Bo's ears. He's slowed down some, but he's still got good years left. Silence settled between them. Not uncomfortable exactly, just present. Mrs. Price tells me you've been alone out here for some time, Martha said carefully. 6 years. That's a long time. It is. She waited for more. It didn't come. I'm sorry, she said. I didn't mean to pry. You didn't. Jacob stared at his coffee. My wife died 6 years ago. Our son with her. I wasn't there when it happened. Martha's breath caught. Mr. Wilder. Fire. His voice was flat, controlled. House caught while I was delivering horses 3 towns over. By the time I got word, by the time I got back, he stopped, started again. Nothing left but ashes. Martha didn't know what to say. What could anyone say to that? I'm so sorry. Everybody is. He drained his coffee and stood. Best get to work. Storm's coming. Want to get the worst of the leaks patched before it hits. He climbed onto the roof without another word. Martha sat on the steps a moment longer, her coffee growing cold, her chest aching for this quiet man who carried his grief like a stone around his neck. Mama? Grace's small face appeared in the doorway. Hannah says I have to practice my letters again, but my hand hurts. Martha forced a smile. Let me see. She went inside and closed the door behind her, but her thoughts stayed on the roof, with Jacob Wilder and his sad eyes and his 6 years of silence. The first day of school arrived with a bitter wind that cut through Martha's thin coat. She stood at the schoolhouse door, her daughters arranged in the front row, watching the road for students who might or might not come. What if nobody shows up? Molly asked. People will come. How do you know? Because education matters, even out here. But what if... Molly, Hannah's voice was sharp. Stop asking questions and sit still. Molly's face crumpled. You're mean. I'm realistic. Girls, Martha kept her voice calm. Not today. Please. The first student arrived at 10 minutes past 8. A scrawny boy of about 12, with red hair and a defiant expression. You the new teacher? I am, Mrs. Callahan. And you are? Billy Tucker. He looked her up and down. My pa says women teachers don't last out here. Then your pa will be surprised. Take a seat, Mr. Tucker. More students trickled in over the next half hour. Ranchers' children, miners' children, ranging in age from 6 to 15. Martha counted 19 by the time she rang the bell. 19 faces staring at her with varying degrees of curiosity and skepticism. She took a breath. Good morning. I am Mrs. Callahan, your new teacher. I know some of you had Miss Brennan before, and I know change can be difficult. She let her gaze move across the room. But I promise you this. If you work hard and show respect, we will accomplish great things together. Billy Tucker raised his hand. What kind of great things? You'll learn to read anything put in front of you, to calculate sums that would make your father's head spin, to understand the history of this nation and the world beyond it. Martha met his eyes. And perhaps most importantly, you'll learn to think for yourselves, to question, to reason. Those are skills that can't be taken from you, no matter what life brings. The skepticism in Billy's face flickered, shifted to something that might have been interest. Now, Martha said, let's begin. The morning passed in a blur of lessons and adjustments. Martha grouped students by ability, moving between them, teaching, correcting, encouraging. By noon, her voice was hoarse and her feet ached. But something had happened. Something small, but real. Billy Tucker had stopped rolling his eyes. A shy girl named Sarah had read an entire paragraph aloud without stumbling. And Grace, quiet Grace who rarely spoke to strangers, had helped a younger student with her letters. You're good at this, Hannah said during the lunch break. Martha looked at her daughter, surprised. You think so? The teaching, I mean, Hannah shrugged. Back in Boston, you always seemed unhappy. I wasn't unhappy with teaching. I was unhappy with everything else. Is that why you answered Mr. Perkins' advertisement? The question cut closer than Hannah probably knew. Martha set down her bread and faced her daughter. I answered because I was desperate. We were out of money, out of options, and there was a man back in Boston who wanted to marry me for reasons that had nothing to do with love. Hannah's eyes widened. What man? Your father's brother, Cornelius. Uncle Cornelius? Hannah's voice dropped. But I know what he is. Martha's jaw tightened. That's why we left. Hannah was quiet for a long moment. Does he know where we are? No, and we're going to keep it that way. A knock at the schoolhouse door made them both jump. Martha rose, heart pounding, half expecting to see Cornelius Callahan standing there with his cold smile and his calculating eyes. Instead, she found Jacob Wilder. Ma'am? He touched his hat. Roof's finished. Relief flooded through her. Already? Wanted to beat the storm. Martha stepped outside to look. The patches were neat, the work solid, professional. Mr. Wilder, I don't know how to thank you. Don't need thanks. But his eyes lingered on her face. How'd the first day go? Better than I hoped. Good. He shifted his weight. I brought something. For the girls. He gestured toward his wagon, where something was moving beneath a blanket. What is it? Come see. Martha approached the wagon carefully. Jacob pulled back the blanket to reveal a wooden crate containing 3 kittens, orange, gray, and black and white, mewing and tumbling over each other. Barn cats, he explained. Mother got taken by a coyote last week. They need homes. Mr. Wilder, cabin gets cold at night. Cats help with that. And with mice. He paused. If you don't want them. Kittens! Molly's shriek split the air. She had appeared from nowhere, her face alight with joy. Mama, look! Kittens! Within seconds, all 3 of her daughters had surrounded the crate, their hands reaching in to stroke soft fur. Can we keep them? Molly begged. Please, Mama, please! They need too much care. I'll take care of them, Hannah said quickly. I'll feed them and clean up after them, I promise. Martha looked at her oldest daughter, Hannah, who never asked for anything. Hannah, whose face had softened in a way Martha hadn't seen in years. All right, she heard herself say. They can stay. Molly screamed with delight. Grace actually laughed out loud. And Hannah. Hannah smiled at Jacob Wilder with something that might have been gratitude. Thank you, Hannah said quietly. They like warm spots. Jacob's voice was gruff. And they'll eat just about anything, but don't give them fish bones. He climbed onto his wagon and took the reins. Mr. Wilder, Martha stepped forward, won't you stay for supper? Mrs. Price sent food, and it's the least I can offer. He hesitated. Martha could see him weighing the offer, considering implications she hadn't fully thought through. A widow asking a single man to dinner in a town that was already watching her every move. Just supper, she added quickly, as thanks. Nothing more. Another long pause. All right, Mrs. Callahan. I'd be obliged. Supper was stew, simple but filling. Martha served Jacob first, then her daughters, then herself, watching nervously as he took his first bite. Good, he said, and meant it. The meal passed in relative silence, broken only by Molly's endless questions about the kittens, which Jacob answered with surprising patience. What should we name them? That's up to you. I want to name the orange one Sunshine, because he's sunny. Fitting. And the gray one can be Storm, because of his color. Also fitting. And the black and white one, Molly considered. Boots, because he looks like he's wearing boots. Good names, all of them. Grace, who had barely spoken all evening, reached out and touched Jacob's hand. Thank you for the kittens, she whispered. Jacob's expression shifted, softened. You're welcome, Miss Grace. After supper, Martha walked Jacob to the door while her daughters argued over who got to hold which kitten first. I should apologize for Molly's questions. She doesn't know when to stop. She's curious. Nothing wrong with that. Jacob pulled on his hat. You've got good girls, Mrs. Callahan. Martha. The name slipped out before she could stop it. Please, call me Martha. He was quiet for a moment. Then, Jacob. Jacob. It felt strange on her tongue, intimate in a way that made her pulse quicken. I should go. But he didn't move. Storm's coming tonight. Bad one from the feel of it. You've got enough firewood, but if you need anything, we'll be fine. I know you will. His eyes held hers. But if you need anything, I'm 5 miles east. Follow the creek and you can't miss it. Thank you for everything. You keep thanking me. You keep helping us. Something passed between them, unspoken but real. Then Jacob touched his hat and walked away, his figure disappearing into the gathering dusk. Martha stood in the doorway longer than she should have, watching, wondering, feeling things she had no business feeling. Mama, Hannah's voice came from behind her. You're letting the cold in. Martha turned. Her daughter stood in the kitchen doorway, a kitten cradled in her arms, her expression unreadable. He seems sad, Hannah said. He lost his family. That's a hard thing. I know. Hannah's eyes were too old, too knowing. Maybe that's why he helps us. Because he knows what it's like to have nothing. Maybe. Hannah retreated to the bedroom, the kitten purring against her chest. Martha closed the door and leaned against it, pressing her hand to her heart. She didn't have room for this. Not for sad ranchers who fixed roofs and brought kittens. Not for hope. Not for anything except her daughters and the work ahead. But that night, as she lay in bed listening to the wind howl against the walls, her thoughts kept drifting to brown eyes and quiet voices, and a man who understood loss. The storm hit at midnight. Martha woke to Molly's screams and Grace's coughing, and a cold so fierce it turned her breath to ice. Mama! Molly was crying. Mama, I'm scared! I'm here, baby. Martha pulled her daughters close. I'm right here. But Grace's coughing was getting worse. Deep, rattling sounds that seemed to tear from her lungs. She's burning up. Hannah pressed her hand to Grace's forehead. Mama, she's really hot. Martha's heart seized. Not again. Please, God, not again. Grace had always been the fragile one, the one who caught every illness, who struggled through every winter. In Boston, Martha had nearly lost her twice to fever. Get me cold water, Martha ordered, and all the blankets we have. Hannah ran. Martha gathered Grace into her lap, rocking her gently, murmuring prayers she wasn't sure she believed anymore. Mama? Grace's voice was thin, thready. I don't feel good. I know, baby, I know. Mama's going to make it better. But the storm raged outside. The fire was dying, and they were 5 miles from the nearest neighbor, alone, in a cabin that was barely holding against the wind. Stay with your sisters, Martha told Hannah. Keep the fire going. I'm going to... Going to what? Hannah's voice cracked. It's a blizzard, Mama. You can't go anywhere. She was right. Martha knew she was right. But Grace was getting worse by the minute, her breath coming in short, labored gasps, her small body burning with fever. There has to be something, Martha's voice shook. There has to be... A pounding at the door cut through the wind. Martha froze. Who could possibly be out in this? She grabbed the fire poker and approached the door slowly. Who's there? It's Jacob. His voice was muffled by the storm. Let me in. Martha threw open the door. Jacob stood on the porch, covered in snow, his horse barely visible behind him, ice in his beard and exhaustion in his eyes. Saw your light, he said. Figured something was wrong.
Grace,
Martha's voice broke.
she's sick. Fever and cough. I don't know what to do.
Jacob pushed past her into the cabin. He went straight to Grace, pressing his hand to her forehead, listening to her breathing.
How long? It started tonight. But she's had this before. In Boston, she nearly...
I brought medicine. He pulled a bottle from inside his coat. Doc Stone gave it to me last year for my foreman's boy. Same thing. Coughing, fever. He met Martha's eyes. It helped.
How did you know to bring it?
Didn't know. Just had a feeling. He uncorked the bottle. Spoonful every 4 hours. We need to get her fever down, too. Cold compresses, steam from boiling water. Martha didn't ask how he knew all this. Didn't question why he had ridden through a blizzard to reach them. She just moved, following his instructions, working beside him through the long night. They took turns, one holding Grace upright for the steam, the other applying cool cloths to her burning skin. One tending the fire, the other watching for any change. And slowly, impossibly, Grace's breathing eased.
She's better, Martha whispered as dawn approached. She's going to be all right.
Jacob slumped against the wall, exhaustion written in every line of his face. She needs rest. We all do.
You saved her life.
You saved her life. I just helped. Martha looked at him. Really looked. At the man who had appeared in a blizzard, who had known somehow that they needed him, who had stayed through the darkest hours without asking for anything in return.
Why?
She asked. Why do you keep helping us? Jacob was quiet for a long moment. Because I couldn't save them, he said finally. My wife, my son. I wasn't there when they needed me. And by the time I got home, he stopped, swallowed. I was too late. Jacob, I couldn't save them. But I was here tonight. I could help. He looked at Grace's sleeping face. That matters. Martha's throat closed with tears she was too exhausted to shed.
Thank you,
she whispered.
Thank you for being here.
I'll always be here. His voice was rough. When you need me, I'll always come. It was a promise. Martha heard it in his voice, saw it in his eyes. And for the first time since Thomas died, she let herself believe it. The storm broke on the second day. Jacob stayed until Grace's fever broke completely, until the color returned to her cheeks and her breathing came easy again. Then he insisted on leaving before the town woke and started asking questions. I'll come back, he said at the door. Check on her in a few days. Jacob, Martha caught his arm. What you did... Don't. He covered her hand with his. Don't thank me. Just get some rest. Then he was gone, trudging through the snow toward his horse, leaving Martha standing in the doorway with her heart doing things it had no right to do. Mama, Molly's voice came from behind her. Is Mr. Jacob coming back? Yes, baby. He'll come back. Good, Molly yawned. I like him. He's warm. Martha watched Jacob's figure disappear into the white landscape. Warm, she thought. Yes, he is. And that was exactly the problem. Word spread, as Martha had known it would. By the time she returned to teaching the following week, half the town seemed to know that Jacob Wilder had spent 2 nights in the Widow Callahan's cabin during the blizzard. Mrs. Price was the first to address it directly. People are talking, she said, catching Martha after church. You need to know what they're saying. I can imagine. Can you? Agatha's voice was serious. They're saying you came here looking for a husband and set your sights on the richest bachelor in the county. That's not true. Grace was sick. He helped because no one else could. I know that, but knowing and believing are 2 different things in a town this size. Martha's jaw tightened. What am I supposed to do? Let my daughter die to preserve my reputation? Of course not. Agatha touched her arm. I'm not blaming you. I'm warning you. Reverend Cross is already asking questions. If you give him any more ammunition— She didn't need to finish. I'll be more careful, Martha said. I'll keep my distance from Mr. Wilder. That might be wise, at least until the talk dies down. Martha nodded and left, her jaw tight with the unfairness of it all. She had done nothing wrong. Jacob had done nothing wrong. He had saved her daughter's life, and for that, both of them were being punished. But Martha couldn't afford to fight. Not with her job at stake. Not with her daughters depending on her. She would keep her distance. She would be proper. She would survive. But Jacob Wilder, it seemed, had other ideas. He appeared at the schoolhouse 3 days later, just as Martha was dismissing her students. Mr. Wilder. She kept her voice carefully neutral, aware of Billy Tucker's curious eyes, aware of the women watching from the general store across the street. Can I help you? Came to check on Grace. He dismounted, his movements slow and deliberate. See how she's recovering. She's much better, thank you. Glad to hear it. He shifted his weight, looking uncomfortable. Also brought something. For the girls, if that's all right. Martha's pulse quickened. Mr. Wilder, I don't think— It's books. He gestured toward his saddlebag. Found them at the trading post in Cheyenne. Thought your daughters might like them. Books. Not flowers, not jewelry, not anything that could be misconstrued. Just books. Martha felt her resistance waver. Mama! Molly had spotted Jacob and was already running toward him. Mr. Jacob, did you bring the kittens more food? Molly, don't run. But Martha's warning came too late. Molly had already launched herself at Jacob, wrapping her arms around his legs with the fearless affection of a 5-year-old. Jacob froze. His hands hovered awkwardly above Molly's head, uncertainty written across his face. She does this, Martha said quickly. I'm sorry. Molly, let go of Mr. Wilder. But I missed him. You barely know him. I know he's nice. Molly looked up at Jacob with those 2 bright eyes. Aren't you nice, Mr. Jacob? Something cracked in Jacob's expression. Something raw and painful and achingly tender. I try to be, he said quietly. He reached down and lifted Molly onto his hip with the practiced ease of a man who had once held a child of his own. Molly squealed with delight and wrapped her arms around his neck. She's not usually this comfortable with strangers, Martha said, her voice strained. Maybe I'm not a stranger anymore. Their eyes met, held. Martha looked away first. The books, she said. You mentioned books. Jacob set Molly down and retrieved 3 volumes from his saddlebag. Poetry for the older one, she seems the type. Adventure stories for the middle one. And this— he held up a worn picture book— for the little one. Martha took them with trembling hands. These must have cost— Don't matter what they cost. It matters to me. Then consider it an investment in education. A ghost of a smile crossed his face. I hear the teacher in this town is exceptional. Martha's cheeks flushed. Who told you that? Half the parents in Silver Creek. Seems their children come home talking about Mrs. Callahan and her lessons. He paused. Billy Tucker's father says the boy actually wants to learn now. First time in his life. Billy's a good student when he applies himself. He never applied himself before you came. Martha didn't know what to say. Compliments felt foreign to her, like clothes that didn't fit. Thank you, she managed. For the books. The girls will treasure them. Hope so. Jacob touched his hat. I should go. Let you get back to your evening. Wait. The word escaped before Martha could stop it. Jacob turned. Would you— she swallowed. Would you like to stay for supper? It's just stew again, but there's plenty. She saw him weighing the invitation, saw him thinking about the town's watchful eyes, the whispers that would follow, the damage it could do to her reputation. "I don't want to cause you trouble," he said. "You won't. People talk. People always talk." Martha lifted her chin. "I'm tired of letting their talk control my life." Something shifted in Jacob's expression. Respect, maybe. Or something deeper. "All right, then. I'd be obliged." Supper was different this time. Warmer. Easier. Hannah had lost some of her rigid suspicion, asking Jacob questions about his ranch, about his horses, about life on the frontier. Grace sat close to him, her small hand occasionally touching his sleeve, seeking connection in her quiet way. And Molly never stopped talking, filling every silence with observations and questions and declarations of love for the kittens. "Boots caught a mouse today," she announced. "It was disgusting, but also impressive." "Cats are good hunters," Jacob said. "That's why they're useful on ranches." "Do you have cats at your ranch?" "A few. Barn cats mostly." "Do they have names?" "Not really." Molly looked horrified. "But everything needs a name." "I reckon they do. Just never got around to it." "I'll name them for you." Molly sat up straighter. "Next time we visit, I'll name all of them." The table went quiet. Martha's heart stopped. "Molly, we can't just invite ourselves." "Actually," Jacob set down his fork, "I was going to suggest something similar." Martha stared at him. "What?" "A trip to the ranch, for the girls." He glanced at Hannah. "Your students have been asking about horses. Billy Tucker won't stop pestering me about seeing the operation. I thought maybe a school trip—" "A field trip," Hannah said slowly. "To your ranch. If your mother approves." All three girls turned to Martha with identical expressions of desperate hope. "Please, Mama," Molly begged. "Please, please, please." "It would be educational," Hannah added. "We could learn about animal husbandry." Even Grace spoke up, her voice barely above a whisper. "I want to see the horses." Martha looked at her daughters, looked at Jacob. "I would have to get permission from the school board," she said carefully. "Of course, and it would have to be properly chaperoned. Mrs. Price has already offered to come. I asked her before I mentioned it to you." Martha's eyebrows rose. "You planned this." "I hoped." His eyes held hers. "I hoped you'd say yes." The vulnerability in his voice undid her. "All right," she said. "I'll talk to Reverend Cross tomorrow." Molly's shriek of joy nearly lifted the roof. The field trip was approved. Martha spent the following week preparing her students, teaching them about horses and ranching and the economics of frontier life. The children were restless with anticipation, and even Billy Tucker arrived early each morning, eager to learn more. "You've transformed that classroom," Mrs. Price observed during one of Martha's visits. "Those children actually want to be there now." "They're good kids. They just needed someone to believe in them." "They needed you." Agatha squeezed her hand. "And so does someone else, whether he admits it or not." Martha's cheeks warmed. "Mrs. Price, I see how he looks at you, and I see how you look at him when you think no one's watching." "It's not what you think, child. I've been alive 55 years. I know exactly what I think." Agatha's expression softened. "Jacob Wilder has been dead inside for 6 years. You brought him back to life. That's not nothing. The town can hang. You deserve happiness, Martha. Both of you do." Martha wanted to argue, wanted to explain all the reasons why she couldn't let herself feel what she was feeling. But the words wouldn't come, because the truth was, she was falling for Jacob Wilder, and she was terrified. The day of the field trip arrived cold but clear. 23 students piled into wagons for the 5-mile journey to Jacob's ranch. their excitement barely contained. Mrs. Price rode alongside Martha, offering occasional commentary on the landscape and the children's behavior. Billy Tucker just threw a snowball at Sarah Jennings. "Billy!" Martha's voice cut through the morning air. "Hands to yourself." "Yes, ma'am." But he was grinning. Martha couldn't help smiling too. These children had become hers in a way she hadn't expected. Their triumphs were her triumphs. Their struggles, her struggles. Silver Creek had stopped feeling like exile and started feeling like home. Jacob met them at the ranch entrance, mounted on a tall chestnut horse that made Molly gasp with awe. "Welcome to the Wilder Ranch," he said, his voice carrying across the group. "Today you're going to learn how we raise and train horses. Pay attention, ask questions, and don't wander off without permission. Clear?" "Yes, sir," came the chorus of voices. Jacob's eyes found Martha's across the crowd. He nodded once, then turned to lead them toward the corrals. The morning passed quickly. Jacob led the children through his operation with patient expertise, explaining breeding and training and the business of selling horses to cavalry and ranchers. Even the most restless students listened with rapt attention. But the highlight came after lunch, when Jacob brought out a gentle mare named Penny and offered riding lessons. "Who wants to go first?" Every hand shot up. "How about the Callahan girls, since their mother made all this possible?" Molly screamed with excitement. Grace looked terrified, but hopeful. And Hannah, usually so composed, allowed a rare smile to cross her face. Jacob lifted Molly onto the saddle first, keeping one hand on the reins as he led her around the corral. "I'm riding!" Molly shrieked. "Mama, look! I'm actually riding!" "I see you, baby!" Martha's heart swelled with joy. Grace went next, her small body tense with fear, until Jacob's steady voice calmed her. By the second lap around the corral, she was sitting straighter, her face glowing with pride. But it was Hannah who surprised everyone. She rode like she'd been born to it. Straight-backed and confident, her hands steady on the reins, her body moving in perfect rhythm with the horse. "She's a natural," Jacob said, coming to stand beside Martha. "Seen a lot of riders in my time, but not many take to it that quickly." "She's always been determined. Whatever she sets her mind to, she masters." "Wonder where she gets that from?" Martha's cheeks flushed. "I don't know what you mean." "Sure you do." Jacob's voice was soft, meant only for her. "You're the most determined woman I've ever met, Martha. Coming all this way with 3 children and nothing but hope. Building a life from scratch. Fighting for every inch of ground." "I didn't have a choice." "Everybody has choices. You chose to fight instead of giving up." His eyes held hers. "That's not nothing. That's everything." Martha couldn't speak, couldn't think, could only stand there, her heart pounding, feeling exposed in a way that had nothing to do with the cold. "Mama!" Molly's voice broke the spell. "Can I ride again, please?" Martha blinked. "Maybe later, baby. Let the other children have a turn." The afternoon continued, but something had shifted between Martha and Jacob. Every glance felt weighted. Every accidental touch sent electricity through her skin. And she knew, with certainty, that both thrilled and terrified her, that this was more than gratitude, more than friendship. This was love. After the students left, Jacob invited Martha and her daughters to stay for supper. "Mrs. Everett's been cooking all day," he said. "Seems a shame to waste it." Martha hesitated. The proper thing to do was refuse. Go home, maintain the distance that propriety demanded. But her daughters were looking at her with such hope, and Jacob's eyes held such quiet longing, and for once, just once, Martha wanted to choose happiness over fear. "All right," she said. "We'll stay." Supper was a revelation. Jacob's house was larger than Martha had expected, comfortable and well built, with touches of warmth that must have come from his late wife. His housekeeper, Mrs. Everett, served roast chicken with potatoes and vegetables, followed by apple pie that made Molly moan with pleasure. "This is the best food I've ever eaten," Molly announced. "Don't let Mrs. Price hear you say that," Martha warned. "Mrs. Price's food is good too. This is just better." She turned to Jacob. "Can we live here?" "Molly," Martha's face flamed. "What? It's nice and warm, and there are horses." Jacob laughed, a real laugh, deep and warm, the first Martha had ever heard from him. The sound made her heart ache in the sweetest way. After supper, the girls explored the house while Mrs. Everett cleaned up. Hannah found Jacob's library and immediately lost herself in the books. Grace curled up by the fire with Boots, who had somehow made the journey in Molly's coat. And Molly demanded a tour of everything, which Jacob provided with surprising patience. Martha found a moment of quiet in the parlor, standing before a small photograph on the mantel. "That's Mary." Jacob's voice came from behind her. "My wife." Martha turned. "She was beautiful." She was. He moved to stand beside her, close enough that she could feel his warmth. "She would have liked you." "You think so?" "I know so. She always said I needed someone stubborn enough to match me." Martha laughed despite herself. "I'm not sure that's a compliment." "It is." Jacob's expression grew serious. "Martha, I need to tell you something." Her heart stuttered. "What?" "I've been thinking about the future, about what I want." He paused. "About what I hope for." "And what do you hope for?" Jacob turned to face her, his eyes intense. "I hope for you. You and the girls. I hope for mornings waking up knowing you're near, and evenings watching the sunset together. I hope for Christmases and birthdays and ordinary days that feel extraordinary because you're there." Martha's breath caught. "Jacob, I know it's fast. I know there are obstacles, but I've spent 6 years running from anything that might hurt me again." He took her hands in his palms rough but gentle. "I don't want to run anymore, Martha. I want to live, really live, with you." Tears blurred her vision. "I'm scared." "So am I." He lifted her hands to his lips. "But maybe we could be scared together." Martha laughed, a wet and broken sound. "That's not very romantic." "Never claimed to be a poet." His thumb traced her knuckles. "But I mean every word. I'm not asking for anything you're not ready to give. I just want you to know that I'm here, that I'm not going anywhere." "What about the town? The gossip?" "Let them talk." His voice hardened. "I've spent 6 years caring what people think, and it's brought me nothing but loneliness. I'm done hiding from my feelings, from my past, from what I want." "And what do you want?" "You." The word was simple, direct, utterly devastating. "You and your girls and everything that comes with it. I want to build something with you, Martha. Something real." Martha's heart pounded so hard she thought it might break through her chest. She thought of all the reasons to say no. The gossip, the judgment, the fear of loving and losing again. Then she thought of Jacob. His patience, his kindness, the way he looked at her daughters like they were precious rather than burdens. "I'm not easy," she warned. "I'm stubborn and proud, and I have trust issues, and 3 daughters who need—" "Good thing I'm patient then." A smile tugged at his lips. "And I happen to like stubborn, proud women with trust issues." "Jacob." He kissed her, soft at first, questioning, then deeper when she didn't pull away, her hands gripping his shoulders, her body pressing against his, years of loneliness dissolving in the warmth of his embrace. When they finally broke apart, breathless and trembling, Molly's voice rang out from the doorway. I knew it! She was grinning from ear to ear.
I knew you liked each other. Martha buried her face in Jacob's chest, half laughing, half crying. We've been caught.
Seems so. But Jacob was smiling too, his arms tight around her. Guess we'd better make it official. Martha pulled back to look at him. What do you mean? I mean, when you're ready, when you're sure, I want to marry you, Martha Callahan. His voice was steady, certain. I want to give those girls a father and you a partner. I want to build a life with you, here, on this land, for as long as we both shall live. Martha's eyes filled with tears. You're serious? Never been more serious about anything. She looked at him. This man who had appeared when she needed him most, who had saved her daughter and defended her honor, and offered her hope when she had none left. Ask me again, she whispered. When the time is right, ask me again. I will, he kissed her forehead. I promise I will. From the doorway, Molly's voice rose again.
Does this mean we get to live here with the horses? Molly!
Hannah had appeared, trying to drag her sister away. Give them privacy.
But I want to know about the horses.
You'll find out later.
But...
Molly May Callahan. Martha laughed, really laughed, for the first time in years. This was family. Messy, ridiculous, beautiful family. And somehow, against all odds, she had found it again. The ride back to town was quiet, all three girls exhausted from the day's excitement. Molly fell asleep against Martha's shoulder, and even Hannah's usual vigilance had softened into drowsy contentment. But Martha's mind was racing. Jacob wanted to marry her, had said the words, made his intentions clear. And she wanted to say yes. Every part of her wanted to say yes. But fear still whispered in the back of her mind. Warnings about trusting too quickly, about believing in happiness that could be snatched away.
Mama?
Hannah's voice was quiet.
Are you going to marry him? Martha glanced at her daughter. Would that be all right with you?
Hannah was quiet for a long moment.
Papa he wasn't always kind, especially near the end.
Martha's chest tightened. I know, baby.
Mr. Jacob is different. He's good.
Hannah looked at her mother with those two old eyes.
I think he would make you happy.
What about you? Would he make you happy? Hannah considered.
He listens when I talk. He remembers things I say. He doesn't treat me like a child, even though I am one.
She paused.
I think I could learn to love him, if you gave me time.
Martha's eyes burned. Thank you, Hannah, for being honest. Someone has to be. But Hannah smiled, just slightly.
I just want you to be happy, Mama. You deserve it.
Martha pulled her daughter close, careful not to wake Molly.
We all deserve it,
she whispered.
And maybe, finally, we're going to get it.
But even as she spoke the words, a shadow of unease crept into her heart. Happiness like this came with a price. It always did. She just didn't know yet what that price would be. The stranger rode into Silver Creek the next morning. Martha was walking to the schoolhouse when she saw him. A well-dressed man on a fine horse, too polished for this rough frontier town. He stopped outside the general store, dismounting with the easy grace of someone accustomed to attention. Something about him made Martha's skin prickle. He was watching her. She was certain of it, even as he made a show of talking to Mr. Patterson on the store porch.
Mama?
Grace tugged at her sleeve.
Who is that man?
I don't know, baby.
He's looking at us.
Don't stare. Keep walking. But Martha's hands were shaking as she ushered her daughters toward the schoolhouse. And when she glanced back one final time, the stranger's eyes met hers. He smiled, and Martha's blood turned to ice, because she knew that smile, knew the coldness behind it, the calculation, the hunger. Cornelius Callahan had found them. Martha couldn't focus on her lessons. Her hands trembled as she wrote arithmetic problems on the board. Her voice wavered as she guided students through their reading. Every few minutes, her eyes darted to the window, searching for a figure that might be watching. Mrs. Callahan? Billy Tucker's voice cut through her thoughts. You wrote the same problem twice. Martha looked at the board. He was right. The same equation, repeated in her shaky handwriting.
Thank you, Billy.
She erased it quickly.
I'm a bit distracted today.
Are you sick?
No, just tired.
But she wasn't tired. She was terrified. Cornelius was here, in Silver Creek, 300 miles from Boston, and he had found them. How? The question burned in her mind. She had been so careful, changed their route twice, told no one where they were going. But Cornelius had money, connections, the patience of a predator.
Mama.
Hannah's voice was low, urgent. She had moved to the front of the classroom, her face pale.
That man from this morning, he's outside.
Martha's heart stopped. She crossed to the window. Cornelius Callahan stood on the boardwalk across the street, watching the schoolhouse with that cold smile that haunted her nightmares. Stay here, Martha told Hannah. Keep your sisters inside.
Mama, don't.
Stay here. Martha walked out of the schoolhouse, her legs shaking beneath her skirts. The cold air hit her face, but she barely felt it. Every sense was focused on the man watching her approach. Martha. Cornelius removed his hat, revealing slicked back hair. You're looking well. Country life suits you. What are you doing here? Is that any way to greet family? He smiled wider. I've come a long way to find you. The least you could do is pretend to be happy to see me. I'm not happy to see you. I'm asking you to leave. Leave? He laughed, a soft sound that made her skin crawl. After all the trouble I went through to track you down? Mail-order bride advertisements, stagecoach records, telegraph inquiries? You covered your tracks well, Martha. I'm impressed. I didn't want to be found. Clearly. But here's the thing. He stepped closer. You can't run from family. And those girls in there? They're my brother's blood. I have a responsibility to them. You have no responsibility to them. Thomas is dead. Your connection to us died with him. That's where you're wrong. Cornelius's smile faded, replaced by something harder. Thomas owned land, Martha. A parcel up in the hills that nobody knew about. Worthless scrub, or so everyone thought. He paused. Turns out the railroad wants to run a line through that exact spot. The value's gone up considerably. Martha's stomach dropped. I don't know anything about that. Maybe not, but as Thomas's widow, you'd have a claim, and as his brother, so would I, if you were declared unfit to manage the estate. There it was, the threat, wrapped in silk. Unfit, Martha repeated. Well, you did run off with 3 minor children to live in the wilderness. Took up with some cowboy, from what I hear. The courts back in Boston might have concerns about that. I haven't taken up with anyone. Really? Cornelius's eyebrows rose. Because the whole town knows that Jacob Wilder spent 2 nights in your cabin. Knows he visits you every week. Knows your daughters call him by his first name like he's already family. He leaned closer. That's not nothing, Martha. That's ammunition. Fear coiled in Martha's chest, but she forced her voice steady. He saved my daughter's life, twice. There's nothing improper about gratitude. I'm sure that's how you see it, but a judge in Boston might see it differently. Cornelius's voice dropped, confidential, almost kind. I'm not trying to threaten you, Martha. I'm trying to help. Come back east with me. Let me handle the land, the legal matters. The girls can grow up properly, with family around them. You won't have to struggle anymore. And if I refuse? The kindness evaporated from his face. Then I'll have no choice but to file for custody. The children are my brother's blood. I have rights. You have no rights. Martha's voice shook, but not with fear anymore. You're nothing to them. I'm their uncle, And when the courts hear about the widow who ran off to live in sin with a stranger, get away from her." The voice came from behind Martha, low and dangerous in a way she had never heard before. Jacob. He moved past her, putting himself between Martha and Cornelius, his stance wide, his hands loose at his sides. "Who the hell are you?" Cornelius demanded. "Jacob Wilder, and you're on private property, threatening a woman under my protection." "Your protection?" Cornelius laughed. "Is that what you call it? The whole town knows what kind of protection you've been offering, Wilder." Jacob didn't react to the insult. His focus remained fixed on Cornelius, steady and unwavering. "I'm going to say this once. Leave now. Don't come near Mrs. Callahan or her daughters again." "Or what? You'll shoot me? Beat me?" Cornelius's voice dripped with contempt. "I'm not some drifter you can run out of town. I have rights, legal rights." "You have nothing." Jacob's voice was quiet, but something in it made Cornelius take a step back. "Martha is their mother. She has sole custody. Any court in this territory will uphold that." "We're not in this territory. We're going back to Boston, where courts understand the children belong with family, not with their mother's paramour." The word hung in the air, ugly and deliberate. Jacob smiled. It was not a pleasant smile. "Here's what's going to happen," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "You're going to get on your horse, ride back to Mrs. Price's boarding house, and pack your things. Then you're going to get on the next stage heading east, and you're never going to contact Martha or her daughters again." "And if I don't?" "Then I'll have Sheriff Burke arrest you for trespassing, harassment, and attempted extortion. And while you're sitting in jail, I'll have my lawyer contact every judge in Boston to inform them about your activities here." Cornelius's face went red. "You're bluffing." "Try me." The two men stared at each other. Martha could feel the tension crackling between them, thick enough to choke on. Finally, Cornelius looked away. "This isn't over," he said, but his voice had lost its confidence. "You can't protect her forever, Wilder." "Watch me." Cornelius turned and walked to his horse, mounting with jerky, angry movements. He looked back once, his eyes finding Martha's. "You're going to regret this. Both of you." Then he was gone, riding hard toward town. Martha's legs gave out. Jacob caught her before she hit the ground, his arms solid and warm around her shaking body. "It's all right," he murmured. "He's gone. You're safe." "I should have told you." Tears streamed down her face. "I should have told you days ago, but I was scared, and I thought—" "Shh." He held her tighter. "We'll talk about it later. Right now, just breathe." She buried her face in his chest and let herself be held. Let his strength support her. Let his presence anchor her to the world that felt like it was spinning out of control. "Mama?" Martha looked up. Hannah stood in the schoolhouse doorway, Grace and Molly behind her. All three girls were pale with fear. "Is he gone?" Molly whispered. "The bad man?" "He's gone, baby." Martha pulled away from Jacob and opened her arms. "Come here, all of you." Her daughters ran to her, and Martha held them tight, feeling their small bodies tremble against hers.
"I won't let him take you,"
she whispered fiercely.
"I swear to God, I won't let him take you."
"He can't take us," Hannah said, her voice hard. "We won't let him." Jacob stood apart, watching them with an expression that broke Martha's heart. Longing and love and fierce determination, all tangled together. "Nobody's taking anyone," he said quietly. "Not while I'm breathing." Martha met his eyes over her daughters' heads. "Thank you," she mouthed. He nodded once, and in that moment, Martha knew she loved him. Completely. Irrevocably. Whatever came next, they would face it together. That night, after the girls were asleep, Martha told Jacob everything. They sat in her small cabin, the fire crackling low, their voices barely above whispers.
"Thomas was a good man once," Martha said, her hands wrapped around a cup of cold tea. "Before the drinking started, before the failures piled up, we were happy for a while."
What changed?
Everything. The business went under.
We lost the house. Thomas started drinking to forget, and the drinking made everything worse. She stared at the fire. He died owing money to half of Boston. After the funeral, Cornelius showed up with documents I didn't understand. Said I owed him Thomas's debts. Did you?
I don't know. Maybe.
Thomas never told me about his finances. Martha's voice cracked.
Cornelius said he'd forgive the debts if I married him.
Jacob went very still. Married him.
He said it was the proper thing. A widow with children needs a man's guidance. That's how he put it.
Martha's hands tightened on the cup.
But I saw the way he looked at my daughters. The way he looked at me. Like we were property he was entitled to.
So you ran.
I had no choice. He was going to petition for guardianship of the girls. Said I was an unfit mother. Too poor, too unstable, too... She stopped. I saw the advertisement in the paper. A man in Wyoming looking for a wife. It seemed like salvation.
But he died 3 weeks before I arrived. Martha laughed bitterly. Story of my life. Every time I think I've found solid ground, it crumbles beneath me. Jacob reached over and took her hand. His palm was warm, calloused, steady. Not this time, he said. You can't promise that. I can. His eyes held hers. Martha, I've spent 6 years running from pain, hiding from anything that might make me feel again. But you, he lifted her hand to his lips. You woke me up. You and those girls. You made me remember what it's like to want something, to hope for something. Jacob, marry me. The words hung in the air between them. What? Marry me. Tomorrow, if the Reverend will do it. Make it legal, official. Cornelius can't claim guardianship over children whose mother is married to a respectable rancher. He can't call you an unfit mother when you have a husband, a home, a standing in the community. Martha stared at him. You want to marry me to protect me? No. He cupped her face in his hands. I want to marry you because I love you, because I can't imagine my life without you in it, because every morning I wake up thinking about you, and every night I fall asleep hoping tomorrow will be the day you say yes. But the protection doesn't hurt. He smiled slightly. The protection doesn't hurt. Martha's mind raced. Marriage. Tomorrow. It was insane, reckless. Everything she had sworn she would never do again. But Jacob's hands were warm on her face. His eyes held nothing but love. And for the first time in years, she felt safe. Yes, she whispered. Jacob's face transformed. Joy, pure and radiant, breaking through the grief that had shattered him for so long. Yes? Yes, stronger now. I'll marry you, Jacob Wilder. Tomorrow, or whenever the Reverend can see us. But? I want to tell the girls first. This affects them too. They deserve a say. Of course, he kissed her forehead. Whatever you need. Martha leaned into him, breathing in his warmth, his strength, his steadiness. I love you, she said. I should have said it sooner. You said it now. That's enough. They sat together in the firelight, her head on his shoulder, his arm around her waist. And for the first time since she could remember, Martha felt hope that didn't taste like desperation. This could work. This could actually work. The girls' reactions were mixed. Yes, Molly shouted, jumping up and down. Yes, 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 we get to live with the horses. Grace smiled her quiet smile, and pressed close to Jacob's side, her small hand finding his. But Hannah hung back, her expression unreadable. "Hannah?" Martha's heart clenched. "Talk to me. It's very fast." "I know. You've only known him a few months." "I know that too." Hannah looked at Jacob. Her gaze was hard, assessing. "If you hurt her," she said, her voice steady, "I will never forgive you. Do you understand me? Never." Jacob nodded gravely. "I understand. And if you hurt my sisters—" "Hannah," Martha stepped forward. "He won't—" "Let her finish," Jacob held up a hand. "She has every right." Hannah's jaw tightened. "My father made promises too. He broke every single one of them. How do I know you're different?" "You don't." Jacob met her eyes without flinching. "I can tell you I'm different. I can make promises and swear oaths and say all the right words. But in the end, words are just words. The only way you'll know I'm different is if I prove it, day after day, year after year, for the rest of my life." He paused. "That's what I intend to do." Hannah studied him for a long moment. The cabin was silent except for the crackling fire and Molly's excited breathing. Then Hannah nodded. "All right," she said. "But I'm watching you." "I'd expect nothing less." Something shifted in Hannah's expression. Not quite warmth, but something like respect. "Welcome to the family, Mr. Wilder." Jacob's face softened. "Thank you, Miss Hannah, and please, call me Jacob." "Jacob," Hannah tested the name. "That'll take some getting used to." "We've got time." The wedding was planned for 3 days later. Word spread through Silver Creek like wildfire. Mrs. Price bustled about arranging food and flowers. Reverend Cross agreed to perform the ceremony. Even Sheriff Burke stopped by to offer congratulations. "About time that man found some happiness," Burke said, shaking Jacob's hand. "Been worried about him these past years. Alone in that big house with nothing but ghosts." "He won't be alone anymore," Martha said. "No, ma'am, he won't." Burke tipped his hat. "You're good for him, Mrs. Callahan. The whole town can see it." But not everyone was happy about the news. "You're making a mistake." The voice came from behind Martha as she left the general store the next afternoon. She turned to find Cornelius Callahan standing in the shadow of the building, his face tight with barely controlled fury.
"I thought I told you to leave. And miss your wedding? I wouldn't dream of it."
He stepped closer. "Did you think marrying that cowboy would stop me? Did you think a piece of paper would change anything?" Martha's heart pounded, but she kept her voice steady. "I think you should step away from me before Sheriff Burke sees you." "Burke can't touch me. I haven't done anything illegal." Cornelius smiled. "Yet." "Is that a threat?" "It's a promise." He leaned in, his breath hot on her face. "You can run. You can hide. You can marry every rancher in Wyoming. But those girls are Thomas's blood, and I will have them. One way or another, I will have them. Over my dead body. That can be arranged." Cold fear washed over Martha, but before she could respond, a hand clamped down on Cornelius's shoulder and spun him around. Jacob. His fist connected with Cornelius's jaw with a crack that echoed down the street. Cornelius stumbled backward, crashing into a water trough, his fine clothes soaking through. "I warned you." Jacob's voice was ice. "I told you what would happen if you came near her again." Cornelius struggled to his feet, blood dripping from his split lip. "You just assaulted me, in front of witnesses. I'll have you arrested." "Go ahead." Jacob stepped closer. "Press charges. Tell the sheriff how you've been threatening a woman and her children. Tell him about your plans to file false custody claims. Tell him about the land you're trying to steal." Cornelius's face went pale. You don't know anything about— I know everything. Jacob's voice dropped to a growl. I've had a lawyer investigating you for the past week. The debts you claimed Martha owed? Fabricated. The guardianship petition you filed in Boston? Based on lies. The land you're so desperate to get your hands on? Thomas signed it over to Martha 2 months before he died. It's hers, free and clear.
Martha's breath caught. What?
You didn't know? Cornelius laughed bitterly. Of course you didn't. Thomas never told anyone. But I found the deed in his papers after he died. The land is worthless without a wife to access it, and you were supposed to be that wife. Mine. I was never going to be yours. No. Cornelius's eyes burned with hatred. You were supposed to be grateful, supposed to understand that I was offering you salvation. Instead, you ran like a thief in the night, and now you've lost. Jacob's voice was final. The stage leaves tomorrow morning. Be on it. If I see your face in this town again, I won't stop at one punch. Cornelius looked between them, fury and defeat warring in his expression. This isn't over, he spat. Yes, Martha stepped forward, her voice steady for the first time since Cornelius had appeared. It is. Go back to Boston, Cornelius. There's nothing for you here. He stared at her for a long moment. Then, without another word, he turned and walked away, his wet clothes dripping, his shoulders hunched with defeat. Martha watched until he disappeared around the corner. Then her legs gave out. Jacob caught her, pulling her against his chest. It's over, he murmured. It's really over. Is it? Martha looked up at him, tears streaming down her face. How did you know? About the land, the debts. How did you know? I told you I'd protect you. He kissed her forehead. I meant it. But the lawyer, the investigation, that must have cost— Worth every penny. His arms tightened around her. You're worth every penny, Martha. You and those girls. Don't ever doubt that. Martha buried her face in his chest and let herself cry. Let out all the fear and tension and grief she had been carrying for so long. And Jacob held her through it all, steady and strong, her anchor in the storm. Cornelius left on the morning stage, just as Jacob had demanded. Martha watched from Mrs. Price's window, her daughters pressed against her sides, as the coach pulled away and disappeared into the distance. He's really gone, Molly said. The bad man is really gone. He's really gone, baby. He won't come back? No. Martha kissed the top of her daughter's head. He won't come back. Hannah was quiet for a moment. Then, Mr. Jacob, he protected us. He did. That's what fathers do. Hannah's voice was soft. Real fathers. They protect their families. Martha's eyes filled with tears. Yes, baby. That's what they do. Grace tugged at Martha's sleeve. Mama, does this mean we can have the wedding now? Martha laughed through her tears. Yes, sweetheart. Now we can have the wedding. Good. Grace smiled her quiet smile. I've been practicing throwing flowers. The day before the wedding, Martha found Jacob in his barn, brushing down his horse with slow, methodical strokes. You're supposed to be resting, she said. Can't rest. He didn't turn around. Too much to think about. Martha moved closer. Having second thoughts? Never. He finally looked at her, and she saw it then, the fear beneath his steady surface. I just keep thinking about Mary, about what she would say if she could see me now. What do you think she would say? Jacob was quiet for a long moment. I think she'd be happy. She always wanted me to find joy again. Even at the end, When she knew she was dying, she made me promise not to close myself off.
Did you keep that promise?
No. His voice cracked. I failed her. For 6 years, I failed her every single day. Martha took his hands in hers.
You didn't fail her, Jacob. You grieved. That's human. That's natural.
But I'm done grieving now. He lifted her hands to his lips. Because of you. Because you showed me that love doesn't end just because you lose someone. It just changes.
I didn't do anything special.
You did everything. His eyes held hers.
You showed up. You let me help you. You trusted me, even when you were scared.
He paused. That's not nothing, Martha. That's everything. She leaned into him, breathing in his warmth.
I love you.
I love you too. He kissed the top of her head. And tomorrow, I get to tell the whole world.
Nervous?
Terrified. But he was smiling. Best kind of terrified, though. The kind that comes before something wonderful. Martha smiled back.
I know exactly what you mean.
They stood together in the quiet barn, holding on to each other, ready for whatever came next. Tomorrow, they would be married. Tomorrow, they would be family. And tomorrow, Martha would finally stop running. The wedding morning arrived cold and bright. Martha stood before the small mirror in Mrs. Price's spare room, her hands trembling as she fastened the buttons on her blue dress. Not white. She was a widow, and propriety still mattered. But a soft, hopeful blue that made her eyes shine.
You look beautiful, Mama.
Hannah's voice came from the doorway. Martha turned. Her oldest daughter stood there in the green dress Mrs. Price had sewn, her dark hair braided and pinned, looking so grown up that Martha's heart ached.
Thank you, baby. I'm not a baby anymore.
You'll always be my baby. Martha opened her arms. Come here. Hannah crossed the room and let herself be held, just for a moment, her rigid posture softening against her mother's chest.
Are you happy?
Hannah whispered.
I am. Are you?
Hannah pulled back, her eyes glistening.
I think so. I'm still scared sometimes, but mostly I'm happy.
That's enough. Martha kissed her forehead. Happy with some fear is better than safe with no joy.
Did you just make that up?
Your grandmother used to say it, Martha smiled. She was a wise woman.
I wish I could have met her.
She would have loved you, Martha's voice caught. All three of you. The door burst open, and Molly rushed in, her yellow dress already smudged with something that looked like jam.
Mama, Grace threw flowers at me. I was practicing.
Grace appeared behind her, lavender dress pristine, her small face indignant.
You got in the way. You're supposed to throw them on the ground, not at people.
Girls, Martha held up a hand. Not today. Please. Molly's face crumpled.
But she...
Molly may. Hannah's voice cut through the argument. If you ruin Mama's wedding with your nonsense, I will never forgive you. Molly's mouth snapped shut. Martha bit back a laugh. Thank you, Hannah. Someone has to keep order around here. A knock at the door made them all turn. Mrs. Price appeared, her eyes suspiciously bright.
It's time, dear. The whole town's waiting.
Martha's stomach clenched. The whole town?
Every last soul. Even the miners came down from the hills.
Agatha smiled.
Turns out people want to see a happy ending.
We don't get many of those out here. Martha looked at her daughters, her 3 girls, who had survived so much, who had followed her across a continent on nothing but faith.
Ready?
She asked.
Ready,
they said together, and they walked out to meet their future. The church was packed. Martha stood at the entrance, her daughters arranged behind her, and stared at the sea of faces turned toward her. Miners and ranchers, shopkeepers and their wives, children she taught and parents she barely knew, all of them watching, waiting, witnessing. And at the altar, Jacob. He stood tall and steady, his dark suit freshly pressed, his usually windswept hair combed back. Sheriff Burke stood beside him as best man, looking uncomfortable in his Sunday clothes. But Martha barely noticed Burke. All she could see was Jacob's face, the hope there, the love, the joy breaking through years of grief like sunlight through storm clouds.
"Mama," Molly tugged at her hand, "you're supposed to walk."
Martha laughed, surprising herself.
"Yes, baby, I suppose I am."
She took her first step, then another. The aisle stretched before her, impossibly long, and every eye in the church followed her progress. But she kept her gaze on Jacob. Only Jacob. He was smiling now, that rare, beautiful smile that transformed his weathered face. And as she drew closer, she saw tears glistening in his eyes.
"You came,"
he whispered when she reached him.
"Did you think I wouldn't? I thought I might wake up, realize this was all a dream."
Martha took his hands. They were warm, steady, calloused from years of honest work.
"It's not a dream," she said. "It's real. We're real."
Reverend Cross cleared his throat. "Shall we begin?" The ceremony was simple. Reverend Cross spoke of love and commitment, of building a life together in this wild frontier land. He spoke of second chances and new beginnings, of families forged not just by blood, but by choice. Martha barely heard the words. She was lost in Jacob's eyes, in the warmth of his hands holding hers, in the impossible reality of this moment. "Do you, Jacob Thomas Wilder, take this woman to be your lawfully wedded wife, to have and to hold, from this day forward, for better or for worse, for richer or for poorer, in sickness and in health, until death do you part?" "I do." Jacob's voice was strong, unwavering. "And do you, Martha Jane Callahan, take this man to be your lawfully wedded husband, to have and to hold, from this day forward, for better or for worse, for richer or for poorer, in sickness and in health, until death do you part?" Martha looked at Jacob, this man who had appeared when she needed him most, who had fixed her roof and brought her firewood and saved her daughter's life, who had stood between her and danger without hesitation, who had loved her girls as if they were his own. "I do," she said. "Then by the power vested in me by the territory of Wyoming, I now pronounce you husband and wife." Reverend Cross smiled. "You may kiss your bride." Jacob cupped her face in his hands, gentle as always, and kissed her with a tenderness that made her heart soar. The church erupted in applause. Molly cheered louder than anyone. Grace clapped with shy delight. And Hannah, fierce, guarded Hannah, was crying, her face bright with a joy she rarely allowed herself to show. "I love you," Jacob murmured against Martha's lips.
"I love you too."
She pulled back to look at him, her husband, her partner, her home. Now and forever. Now and forever. They turned to face the congregation, hands linked, hearts full. And for the first time in years, Martha felt no fear at all. The celebration spilled from the church into the town square. Tables had been set up with food contributed by every family in Silver Creek. Fiddles played. Children ran wild, and Martha moved through it all in a daze, accepting congratulations and well wishes, her hand never leaving Jacob's. "You did good, son," Sheriff Burke clapped Jacob on the shoulder. "About time you rejoined the living." "Took me long enough to find a reason." "Some things are worth waiting for." Burke nodded toward Martha. "She's one of them." Mrs. Price cornered Martha near the punch bowl.
"How does it feel?" Agatha asked. "Being a married woman again."
"Different," Martha smiled. Better than before. Like I finally found what I was looking for.
Love?
Home. Martha looked at Jacob across the crowd, watching him laugh at something Billy Tucker's father had said. I spent so long running from Thomas's debts, from Cornelius, from my own fear. I forgot what it felt like to stand still. And now? Now, I never want to move again. Agatha squeezed her hand.
Then don't. Put down roots, Martha. Build something. You've earned it.
As the afternoon faded into evening, the crowd began to thin. Parents gathered their children. Old folks headed home to rest. And gradually, the square emptied until only Jacob's closest friends remained. Time to get you home, Jacob said, appearing at Martha's side. Home. The word meant something different now. It meant the ranch, with its big house and rolling pastures. It meant rooms for each girl, space to grow, security to flourish. It meant Jacob. The girls are exhausted, Martha said. Molly had fallen asleep in a chair, her yellow dress rumpled, cake on her face. Grace leaned against Hannah, fighting to keep her eyes open. Let's get them to bed. Jacob lifted Molly easily, cradling her against his chest. Mrs. Everett has the house ready. Martha gathered Grace and Hannah, guiding them toward the wagon where blankets had been arranged for the journey.
Mama?
Grace's voice was sleepy.
Are we going to our new home now? Yes, baby, our new home.
Will it feel like home? Martha looked at Jacob, at her daughters, at the life stretching before them.
It already does.
The ranch house glowed with warmth when they arrived. Mrs. Everett had outdone herself. Fires crackled in every room. Fresh flowers decorated the tables, and the smell of something wonderful drifted from the kitchen.
Welcome home, Mrs. Wilder.
Mrs. Everett beamed at Martha.
I've prepared supper, but I suspect these little ones need sleep more than food.
You suspected right, Martha smiled.
Thank you, Mrs. Everett, for everything.
My pleasure, ma'am. It's good to have a family in this house again.
Jacob carried each girl to her new room, tucking them in with surprising gentleness. Martha followed, kissing foreheads, murmuring goodnights, her heart swelling with each small gesture. Molly roused briefly as Martha pulled her blanket up.
Mama? Yes, baby? Is this really ours? The house and the horses and everything? It's really ours.
Forever?
Forever.
Molly smiled, already drifting back to sleep.
Good. I like forever.
Martha stood in the doorway for a long moment, watching her youngest daughter breathe, feeling the weight of the day settle into something solid and real. They were safe. They were home. They were together. Nothing else mattered. She found Jacob in the parlor, standing before the fireplace, staring at the photograph of Mary on the mantel.
Jacob?
He turned, but not quickly, not guiltily. I was telling her about you, he said. About today. Martha moved to stand beside him, looking at the face of the woman he had loved before her.
What did you tell her?
That I found happiness again. That I'm not alone anymore. His voice roughened. That I finally kept my promise.
The promise to not close yourself off?
That one. He put his arm around Martha, pulling her close. She made me swear, at the end. Made me promise that I wouldn't let grief consume me. That I would find a way to live again. And you did. Because of you. He kissed her temple. You saved me, Martha. Just as much as I saved you. We saved each other. I reckon we did. They stood together in the firelight, looking at the photograph, honoring the past while embracing the future. She would have liked you, Jacob said. I know I've said it before, but it's true. Mary would have loved you.
Tell me about her.
What do you want to know?
Everything.
Martha rested her head on his shoulder. We have time now. All the time in the world. So Jacob talked. He told her about Mary's laugh, her stubbornness, her terrible cooking that he'd pretended to love. He told her about their son Daniel, who had lived only 3 short years, but had filled those years with more joy than Jacob had thought possible. And Martha listened, not with jealousy, but with gratitude. Gratitude that Jacob had known love before. Gratitude that Mary had made him into the man he was. Gratitude that even in death, Mary had wanted him to find happiness. "Thank you," Martha said, when he finally fell silent. "For what?" "For trusting me with them, with your memories. They're part of me." Jacob's arms tightened around her. "Now they're part of us. Part of our family." Exactly. They stayed like that, wrapped in each other, until the fire burned low and sleep began to tug at their edges. "Come to bed," Jacob said. "It's been a long day." "The best kind of long day." "The very best." He took her hand. "Come home with me, Mrs. Wilder." Martha smiled. "I already am." Morning came soft and gray, with snow falling gently outside the windows. Martha woke slowly, disoriented by the unfamiliar room, the unfamiliar bed, the unfamiliar warmth pressed against her side. Then she remembered. Married. She was married. To Jacob. This was her home now. She turned her head to find him watching her, his dark eyes soft in the early light. "Morning," he said. "Morning. Sleep well?" "Better than I have in years." She stretched, feeling muscles she hadn't known were tense, finally releasing. "What time is it?" "Early. Dawn barely broke." "The girls?" "Still sleeping. Mrs. Everett checked on them half an hour ago." Martha relaxed back into the pillows. "I should get up, start breakfast. There's so much to do." "Martha." Jacob's hand covered hers. "Rest. Just for today. Let yourself be taken care of." "I don't know how to do that." "I know. That's why I'm asking." He brought her hand to his lips. "Let me take care of you. Just this once." She wanted to argue. Habit and pride demanded she refuse. But Jacob's eyes held such tender hope that she couldn't bring herself to disappoint him. "All right," she said. "Just this once." His smile was worth every moment of discomfort. The first weeks of marriage passed in a blur of adjustment and discovery. Martha learned the rhythms of the ranch, the demands of livestock and land, the complex choreography of maintaining a working operation. She learned Mrs. Everett's routines, Sheriff Burke's dry humor, the names of every ranch hand and their families. And she learned Jacob. She learned that he took his coffee black and strong, that he read poetry when he thought no one was looking, that he sang to the horses when he thought no one was listening. She learned the patterns of his grief, the days when Mary's absence hit him fresh and sharp, and she learned to hold space for those moments without jealousy or fear. He learned her, too. He learned her restlessness before storms, her need for solitude after difficult days, her habit of reading late into the night when sleep wouldn't come. He learned that she still flinched at raised voices, still watched doors for threats that weren't coming, still sometimes woke, gasping from nightmares she wouldn't describe. They learned each other, slowly and carefully, building trust brick by brick. "Mama?" Hannah found her in the kitchen one afternoon, flour dusting her apron. Mrs. Everett's pie recipe spread before her. "Can we talk?" Martha set down her rolling pin. "Always. What's on your mind?" Hannah sat across from her, her expression serious. "I want to call him Papa." Martha's hands stilled. "What?" "Jacob. I want to call him Papa." Hannah's voice was steady, but her eyes betrayed her nerves. "Grace and Molly already do."
But I've been holding back, and I don't want to hold back anymore.
Hannah, Martha reached across the table. You don't have to ask my permission.
But I do,
Hannah's voice cracked.
because calling him Papa feels like I'm forgetting my real father, like I'm replacing him.
Martha's heart ached.
Baby, come here.
Hannah moved around the table, and Martha pulled her into her arms, holding her tight.
You're not replacing anyone, Martha said.
Your father was your father. Nothing changes that. But love isn't a limited thing, Hannah. You can love more than one person. You can have more than one family.
Is that what we have now? A new family?
We have a bigger family. Martha pulled back to look at her daughter. Jacob isn't replacing your father. He's adding to your life, not taking away from it. Hannah was quiet for a moment. Then,
He's good to us. Really good.
he is.
He doesn't drink. He doesn't yell. He doesn't...
Hannah stopped, swallowed.
He doesn't scare me.
Martha's throat tightened.
Oh, baby. I didn't realize how scared I was all the time. Not until I wasn't scared anymore.
Hannah's eyes glistened.
Is that strange?
No, that's healing. Hannah nodded slowly.
Then I want to call him Papa. I want him to know that I love him.
Tell him yourself. Martha smiled through her tears. He'd want to hear it from you. That evening, after supper, Hannah approached Jacob in his study. Martha watched from the hallway, heart pounding, as her daughter squared her shoulders and knocked on the open door.
Jacob, can I talk to you?
Of course. Come in, he set aside his ledger. Everything all right?
Everything's fine.
Hannah took a deep breath.
I wanted to tell you something.
I'm listening.
I've been thinking about what to call you.
Hannah's voice wavered slightly.
Grace and Molly say Papa, but I've been using your name, and I thought you might think I don't care about you. But that's not true.
Jacob went very still. Hannah.
Let me finish, please.
She straightened.
I care about you. A lot. You've been kind to us and patient, and you protected Mama from Uncle Cornelius, and you make her happy. I can see it. She smiles now, really smiles. She didn't used to do that.
She makes me happy too.
I know,
Hannah swallowed.
So I wanted to ask,
Would it be all right if I called you Papa? Not to replace my real father, but because you're my father now too, and I want you to know that I love you. The silence stretched. Then Jacob stood, crossed the room, and knelt before Hannah. I would be honored, he said, his voice rough. There's nothing in this world that would make me prouder than having you call me Papa. Hannah's composure crumbled. She threw her arms around his neck and held on tight, crying the tears of a child who had finally found safety. Martha pressed her hand to her mouth, her own tears flowing freely. This was family, real family, built not from blood but from choice, from love, from the daily decision to show up for each other. This was what she had been searching for all along. Spring came slowly to Wyoming, melting the snow in patches, revealing green shoots beneath. Martha stood on the ranch house porch, watching her daughters play in the muddy yard. Molly was chasing chickens. Grace was reading under a tree, and Hannah was helping Jacob with the horses, her face bright with concentration as she learned to saddle her own mount. You look happy, Mrs. Price's voice came from behind her. Martha turned. Agatha stood in the doorway, a basket of preserves in her arms. I am happy, Martha smiled. Is that strange to say? After everything? Not strange at all, just rare. Agatha set down her basket. You earned it, Martha. Every bit of it. I'm not sure anyone earns happiness. Maybe not, but you made choices, hard choices. You ran when you needed to run, and you stayed when you needed to stay. You let yourself be helped. You let yourself love again. Agatha's eyes were warm. Those are the choices that lead to happiness. Martha looked back at her family. Jacob had lifted Hannah onto the horse now, and she was laughing, actually laughing, as the mare pranced beneath her. I was so scared when I came here, Martha said, so certain everything would fall apart. And now? Now I'm still scared sometimes, but it's different. She turned to Agatha. The fear doesn't feel bigger than me anymore. That's called peace, child. You finally found it. Peace. Yes, that was exactly what it was. The door opened, and Jacob stepped out, brushing hay from his sleeves. Hannah's a natural, he said, coming to stand beside Martha. Another month and she'll ride better than half my ranch hands. She gets her determination from somewhere. From you. Jacob's arm came around her shoulders. Everything good in those girls comes from you. That's not true. It is. They're strong because you're strong. They're kind because you're kind. They're brave because you taught them to be. He kissed her temple. You did good, Martha. Better than good. Martha leaned into him, breathing in his warmth, his steadiness, his love. We did good, she corrected. Together. Together, he smiled. I like the sound of that. From the yard, Molly's voice rang out. Mama, Papa, watch me catch this chicken. Don't you dare catch that chicken, Martha called back. But it's so slow. Molly May Wilder, step away from that bird. Molly pouted, but obeyed, and Grace laughed from her spot under the tree, and Hannah called down from her horse, asking if she could try a trot. Chaos. Beautiful, ridiculous, wonderful chaos. Ready for this? Jacob asked. Martha smiled. I've been ready my whole life. 6 months later, on a golden autumn afternoon, Martha stood in the doorway of the schoolhouse and watched her students pour out into the sunshine. See you tomorrow, Mrs. Wilder, Billy Tucker called over his shoulder. Bring your arithmetic homework, Mr. Tucker. I'm checking it first thing. He groaned, but waved, running to catch up with his friends. Martha smiled. Billy had transformed this year. The sullen, defiant boy she had met that first day was gone, replaced by an eager student who read books for fun and helped younger children with their letters. They had all transformed, every last one of them, including her. Deep thoughts? Jacob's voice came from behind her. She turned. He stood there, hat in hand, that small smile on his face that still made her heart skip. Just remembering, she said, the day I arrived, how scared I was. And now? Now I can't imagine being anywhere else. He took her hand and pulled her close. Come home with me, Mrs. Wilder. Mrs. Everett's making pie, and the girls are probably destroying something. Probably, Martha laughed. Let's go save what's left. They walked together toward the wagon, hands linked, hearts full. In the distance, Martha could see the ranch house, smoke rising from the chimney, could see Hannah on horseback, racing Grace across the pasture, could hear Molly's delighted shrieks as she chased the dog around the barn. Her family, her home, her life. She had arrived in Silver Creek with 17 cents, 3 hungry daughters, and a dead man's empty promises. She had been abandoned, rejected, dismissed by every person she met. But she had survived. She had fought. She had built something from nothing. And then a quiet cowboy with sad eyes had lifted her up, seen her worth, loved her daughters as his own, had given her shelter from the storm, strength when she faltered, hope when she had none left. This was not the life she had planned. It was not the life she had imagined when she answered that mail-order bride advertisement, desperate and afraid. It was better. It was real. It was home. Martha Jane Wilder climbed onto the wagon beside her husband and looked toward the horizon, where the sun was setting in streaks of gold and rose. "I love you," she said. Jacob squeezed her hand. "I love you too."
Always? Always and forever.
The wagon rolled forward, carrying them home. And Martha, who had spent so many years running from darkness, finally let herself rest in the light. She had fallen to her knees in the frozen mud, with nothing but 17 cents and 3 hungry daughters. A cowboy had reached down and lifted her up. And now, at last, she was exactly where she was meant to be. Home.